Here's a truth most people don't want to face. When you're dealing with an avoidant, you're rarely the only person in the picture. They might not always be sleeping with multiple partners, but emotionally, mentally, and strategically, they're juggling options. It's not because they're overflowing with love, it's because juggling keeps them safe. For the avoidant, multiple attachments mean no single person has power over them. That's why, more often than not, you end up as the backup plan, while they scatter their energy across different people to avoid being vulnerable with just one. Avoidants crave connection, but they're terrified of dependency. So what do? They spread themselves thin. They give little pieces of attention to multiple people. Never too much, never too deep, just enough to keep each one invested. That way, if one person gets too close or threatens their independence, they can retreat without feeling the sting of real loss. It's a safety net strategy, and it means you're likely not their priority, but rather one of the many puzzle pieces they keep on standby. One of the ways avoidants juggle partners is through breadcrumbing. You'll notice this when they drop the occasional text, the random late-night message, or the sudden reappearance after disappearing for days. These breadcrumbs aren't meant to nourish a real relationship. They're designed to keep you hooked just enough so that when their main source of validation falters, they know you'll still be orbiting around them. This tactic turns you into a backup without you even realizing it. They also juggle by compartmentalizing. With one person, they share laughter and surface-level fun. With another, they share emotional vulnerability in tiny doses. With another, they fulfill physical needs. Each partner fills a different role, allowing the avoidant to avoid giving all of themselves to one person. This division of intimacy keeps them from ever feeling fully exposed, and while it makes them feel safe, it leaves you wondering why you never get the whole version of them. That's because you aren't meant to. You're meant to be one compartment in their carefully constructed defense system. Avoidants also rely on triangulation. They subtly bring up other people, exes, friends, or new options in conversations with you, not just to trigger jealousy, but to remind you that you're not their only choice. It's psychological leverage. They want you to feel replaceable, because that feeling makes you work harder for their attention. What you don't realize is that this triangulation is proof that you're already the backup. If you were the priority, they wouldn't need to use competition to keep you invested. One of their secret tactics is emotional outsourcing. When they don't want to be vulnerable with you, they'll turn to someone else for emotional support. Maybe a coworker, a friend, or even an ex. They'll let that person handle the weight of their emotions so they can keep the relationship with you light, distant, and seemingly carefree. This allows them to maintain the image of being independent with you while secretly leaning on others behind the scenes. Avoidants also juggle by carefully managing communication patterns. They won't give you consistent availability because consistent availability signals commitment. Instead, they stagger their energy, giving a burst of attention to one person, then pulling back and giving it to another. This constant rotation keeps everyone on edge, never sure where they stand, and that's exactly how the avoidant likes it. If no one feels secure, then no one can demand deeper intimacy. What surprises most people is that avoidants don't juggle multiple partners because they're overflowing with attraction or charisma. They juggle because of fear. They're afraid of relying on one person, so they create safety in numbers. It's less about abundance and more about protection. They're protecting themselves from the terrifying idea that one person could leave and take their entire sense of security with them. But in doing so, they end up cheapening every connection, including yours. Avoidants also use silence strategically to juggle. When they disappear, you might think they're busy or overwhelmed, but often that silence is them giving attention elsewhere. Silence becomes a juggling tool. While one partner waits anxiously, another gets a burst of intimacy. Then the cycle flips. This rotation ensures no one gets too much and everyone is left craving more. It's a cruel but effective way of maintaining control. They juggle through selective vulnerability. With one person, they'll share a deep wound. With another, they'll act stoic and detached. This fragmented self-presentation ensures no single person ever knows the full truth of who they are. You get the illusion of closeness, but it's partial. Meanwhile, someone else is seeing another side. This patchwork identity means you're only ever holding part of them, never the whole. And that's by design. Avoidants also juggle by keeping exes in their orbit. They may not fully rekindle old relationships, but they rarely cut ties completely. An ex becomes a safety valve, someone they can return to for comfort or validation when new partners become too demanding. By keeping multiple strings attached, they always have someone to fall back on, ensuring they're never fully vulnerable to just one person. They juggle through social media too. The cryptic posts, the attention-seeking stories, the subtle hints of mystery. These aren't random. They're designed to keep multiple people invested without having to directly communicate. Each person interprets the post as meant for them, feeding the avoidance need for validation without the risk of direct vulnerability. Another way they juggle is by downplaying exclusivity. They avoid conversations about commitment, dodge labels, or keep things casual. This vagueness gives them the freedom to juggle multiple people while making each one feel like they might be special. The ambiguity isn't accidental, it's a shield that allows them to avoid accountability while maximizing options. Avoidants also juggle by testing boundaries. They'll see how much late cancellations you tolerate, how long you'll wait for a response, how much attention you'll give after they disappear. Each test reveals how secure their backup plan is. The more you tolerate, the more secure they feel, keeping you on the roster. What feels like inconsistency to you is actually calculation to them. They also juggle through replacement fantasies. Even if they're with you physically, their mind drifts to someone else, an ex, a crush, a new prospect. These fantasies allow them to stay emotionally distant from you while convincing themselves they have options. It's a subtle form of juggling that leaves you feeling unseen, even when you're right beside them. What makes all this worse is that avoidants don't see juggling as betrayal. They see it as survival. In their mind, having multiple connections is the only way to prevent being trapped or hurt. But this survival tactic has a cost. It prevents them from ever experiencing the depth of true intimacy. And it leaves you in the painful position of always wondering if you're enough, when the truth is, you're never meant to be enough in their system. The backup plan role is especially painful because it's invisible. You don't get told you're the backup. You only feel it through their inconsistent energy, their hot and cold behavior, their reluctance to go deeper. You sense something's off, but you can't prove it. That's because their juggling strategy is designed to keep you in the dark, giving you just enough hope to stay while they quietly keep other doors open. Avoidants also juggle by manipulating time. They'll give you intensity in the beginning, the long talks, the passion, the connection, and then suddenly pull back. This creates a cycle of longing that keeps you chasing. While you're busy chasing the version of them you met at the start, they're free to give their time to someone else. You're hooked on the memory of what was, not the reality of what is. They juggle through secrecy. Whether it's locked phones, vague explanations, or private habits, secrecy is their shield. It keeps you from seeing the full picture of how many people they're investing in. Every unanswered question or unexplained absence is often a cover for divided attention, and secrecy ensures you remain confused, which is exactly where they want you. Avoidants also juggle through false reconciliation. When they sense you pulling away, they'll suddenly show up with apologies, promises, or affection. But it's rarely about real change. It's about pulling you back into orbit so you remain a backup option. Once they feel secure again, they retreat, redirecting energy elsewhere. The cycle repeats until you recognize it for what it is, a tactic, not a transformation. They also juggle by exploiting your empathy. Avoidants know you care, so they use vulnerability strategically. They'll open up about their wounds just enough to hook your compassion, making you feel guilty for pulling away. Meanwhile, they keep their other connections light and fun, ensuring no single person demands too much from them. Your empathy becomes the anchor that keeps you waiting while they continue juggling. Another tactic is role assignment. Avoidants unconsciously assign roles to different partners, one for comfort, one for excitement, one for validation, one for safety. You might think you're their everything, but in reality, you're just one role in their emotional theater. And if you stop playing your role, they simply shift attention to another person filling a different role. It's a cold but effective way of ensuring they're never fully dependent on anyone. They also juggle through withdrawal. When one partner demands too much, they retreat and focus on another who's easier to manage. This constant shifting prevents them from ever having to face intimacy head-on. Withdrawal isn't just about needing space, it's about redistributing attention in a way that maintains their emotional equilibrium while leaving everyone else destabilized. The cruelest part of their juggling act is this: avoidants rarely realize the damage they're doing in real time. They convince themselves it's harmless, that everyone knows where they stand, but the reality is their juggling leaves a trail of confusion, insecurity, and heartbreak. And while they protect themselves from vulnerability, they destroy the very connections they claim to want. And here's the ultimate truth. If you're dealing with an avoidant who's juggling multiple partners, you're not the exception, you're the backup, you're part of their strategy, not their surrender. And the only way to break free is to stop competing for a spot in their rotation. Once you see the game, you stop playing it. And when you stop playing, you force them to face the one thing they've been running from all along, the emptiness that juggling partners can never fill.